Hi, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to Ellen Gallinsky as well. You might recognize her name from the video I made on the book Mind in the Making. Well, I had read this book first. It's called The Six Stages of Parenthood, and I find it extremely interesting whether you are a parent or if you've been parented, because I think it tells us as much about our role as parents, but also our parents. And it makes me think a lot about my childhood, what my parents might have gone through, and also helps me decide how to be as a parent going forward. So I'm going to share a lot of what Galensky has said with you, and I hope that you find it useful, whether you are yourself a parent or, a doting aunt or uncle or grandparent, right? So top level observations that Galensky has made. I'll share a few. The first is she says that a lot of feelings that families go through and parents go through are very universal. And so those insecurities, those anxieties, anger, resentment, of course, happiness, they're quite universal, but a lot of people don't realize it and they feel very lonely. Now, since Galensky wrote this book, of course, there's been a proliferation of WhatsApp groups and Instagram communities and things like that. So I do feel the parents are sharing more about what's happening in their lives. But at the same time, parenting has also changed with a lot more challenges, that families, the way families look have changed. There are a lot more divorces, single parents, job insecurities in the world, lifestyle changes, technology. So she does give a nod to the fact that these things change. But I do believe the central essence of this book, of what we go through as people, remains largely the same. The other thing that she says is that there are a lot of books that talk about the development of children and the stages that children go through. And so parents are kind of guided to support those stages, but not a lot of them actually acknowledge that parents are also going through life stages. And so a lot of what they are able to do or not able to do has a lot to do with the life stage that they're in. And as we have children who are older, we might actually be feeling the aches of like getting older while we have really young children, or if you're working and you're like in a particularly tense part of your career and then you've got a child who's got these problems, it can be very difficult for the parent to be able to juggle those. So a nod to that as well. The big takeaway from this book is that parents have a lot of ideas in their head of how things should be, and they form these ideas quite early. And what she says is the measure of a successful parenting journey, or whether you feel like a success or not, has to do with either being able to live up to that idea or being able to change the idea to something more realistic based on your experience with your child. And that is really the key to success, according to me, when I read Galensky's book. So let me tell you a little bit about the different stages of being a parent. So stage number one, she calls it the image making stage. This is really like when you're about to become a parent. And so she talks a lot about pregnancy, but of course, I appreciate people have children through various other means, but it doesn't change the thought behind this, which is, it's not just about a changing body. Of course, that is real in many experiences, but it's also about like anticipating who you're going to be as a parent, image that you come up with of a child. And she says we're all very Freudian in that manner. Goodbye, darling. We're all very Freudian in that way, which is like the image of that child represents who we are as children. So it becomes like this self image almost, but people don't realize it. And then it's also a point in time when you evaluate your childhood. Was it good? Was it bad? You think about why you want to have this child. So is it to validate yourself? Is it for growth, family? Is it so that someone can be there for you when you get older, to provide a sibling for your current child? So a lot of those thoughts kind of go through your head. And she says that it's really important to acknowledge that for a lot of people, this is a stage of anxiety. And so, it's very normal to be anxious till this child actually comes into your life. That brings us to stage two. So stage two is a nurturing stage. And if you want to age for it, it's sort of between birth and like 18 months. So really when the child is like a little baby, helpless baby. And so you can well imagine what parents are thinking about. Can I do this? How can I do this? What about sleep? What about feeding? Right? But the big overall theme is you made up this image over the last 9 months of what this baby is going to be like. And now this baby may not actually look like you, its personality may not be like you, and you might be in a state of feeling overwhelmed by this experience. The key for Galensky is to be able to grow with this stage of the child and say, I will change the image of what this should look like so that I don't feel like a failure. And I think that is what it is, because you need to come up, like, the task of the nurturing stage is to have a connection with your baby. But the connection is not a movie connection that people see the baby for the first time and feel infinite love. No, in fact, bonding can take a lot of time, whether you are the birth parent or the husband or the adopted parent or whatever it might be. She says it's very universal to take a lot of time. And so you need to actually be like aware of these universal experiences and be kind to yourself. Okay, stage 3. This is the authority stage, right? This is like when your toddler is kind of challenging you and you have to kind of set the house rules. So firstly, you have to understand what are your house rules, and then you have to enforce your house rules, and then you have to deal with this child who is not going to like you because you're enforcing those house rules. And so who are you as an authority figure, and are you able to understand how to communicate with your child? This is really important because what Galensky has found through research also is that a lot of high studies done on child abuse, whether it's physical or emotional child abuse, takes place because the parents have expectations of the child behavior which is like much older than the age that they act. So you expect a 2-year-old to display understanding and maturity of a 10-year-old, or you expect a 7-year-old to behave like a 15-year-old. And so that's when parents get really frustrated, right? And so she says that learning about child development can really help like pace yourself, your expectations of the child. I can tell you that this has been really helpful for me because I stopped getting triggered by so many tantrums at that 2.5, 3-year-old age. I understood this is what it is. She's not developed enough to be able to stop because I'm saying stop. And I had to change my tactics around how to communicate with my child. And I think to a large degree, it was pretty successful. So it's been useful to learn about child development. The other thing she says is that the aggression of the child, which a lot of people, it's surprising for them, can also elicit like feelings of aggression in parents, which not is not like something that you expect, I think. So she says that is something that happens. And the other is you have these like idealist, these ideal versions of like what the day will be like. You go for a picnic and everything will be amazing, or you plan this trip to the museum and it's going to whatever it might be, and it's just a complete disaster from the get-go. So she says you have to kind of take a step back and you have to try and enjoy the experience of what it is, what your child actually wants to do versus what you want them to do. And so really, she says success in this stage is if you are able to kind of mold yourself to a more child age appropriate response. And so revise again the images in your head so that you're not hard on yourself or you're not hard on the child. Now, you reach stage 4, and this is sort of like it starts because the kid is going to school. So she calls it the interpretive stage. And so a lot of it has to do with now the child having this great outside life, teachers, new friends, parents, maybe classes they go to. And that's the time when the child comes home and asks you all these questions about life, right? They ask you questions which are complicated. They want to know about birth. They want to know about death. They may want to know about rich and poor and morality. And so this is the time when you realize I need to firstly understand what are my values, what are my morals, what is the kind of lifestyle that I want to give my child, and what does that lifestyle teach my child. This is a stage where a lot of people, they look at like how they were parented and they want to become the parent that they wanted. So you feel like my parents didn't do this for me, so I will do this for my child. But she says you need to really understand the needs of your particular child and the time that you're operating in. And it may not be a copy paste thing because, again, it can lead to you making some choices that are not age appropriate or appropriate for the child. So she says that this is a time when, children also develop images of parenting because they're seeing other houses and they may start wondering why things are a certain way in their house. So the good part, I think, about all this is that while you have to like work extra hard to like now actually intellectually connect with your child, she also says that there's a huge predictability to life. So the highs and the lows aren't that high or low. So there's a predictability to the pattern of life. So it's a little more stable in that sense. Um, which obviously, as you can well imagine, leads us to the next stage of life, which is stage 5. And this is when your child is becoming a teenager. And so all that previous stability that you had managed to get kind of gets thrown away, because now they have reached a different stage of evolution, and they are once again testing your authority, because they now have a sense of self, of themselves as separate, of not wanting to share with you, not wanting to come to you as a parent, and wanting to do their own thing. And parents really struggle with the power dynamic in the house. They really struggle with now finding new language for communication. And so it can become a very, very tense time for parents, and they wonder about whether they are good as parents or not. So this can really upset the apple cart for a lot of parents, who then start re-evaluating like all the stages past and wonder, did I actually do a good job because I'm not connecting to my child now? So what she says is really the key over here, is to really try and again understand the stage that your child is at and how to give them what they need. So there's an anecdote which struck me, which was one person saying, I know that I can't make my child talk to me, but I've kind of figured out that if on Saturdays I'm home and I leave the door open, then my teenager knows that they can walk in any time they want. There's also a mother who got very upset that the child never told her that she got her period, and she couldn't believe that the child didn't confide in her. But then she said, maybe she's not ready to talk to me, so she started leaving like sanitary pads in the bathroom drawer of her child's room, for example. So you're there, but maybe you're not there in the ways that you could in earlier stages of your life. What happens with a lot of parents is they want to look for someone to blame because their power is diminishing, and they can turn the blame on themselves. So she sort of cautions against it. And again, she says, the image that you had, of yourself as a parent or your child as a personality, you need to revise that image, because you're in a different stage now. And so you cannot put yourself down because of that, that static image in your mind. Another thing that I mentioned earlier is like normally in the teenage years, the parents are also going through a different life stage, and many times they are grappling with their own sense of loss, if like they're losing friends or grandparents, right, their own parents, work, job insecurity. So a lot of things come into play. Finances can become an issue because teenagers require more money. So she says there are a lot more life events that correlate to the parenting challenges, and so you should be aware of that. But again, like she says, it's universal. Then that gets us to the last stage, which is the departure stage. Now, being American, so stage number 6, being American, I mean, she's imagining departure stages, 18 and above, and the children move away. Now, obviously, being in India, that's not always the case. The children continue to live with the parents. So I guess in a way, you can interpret it as like an emotional departure. They are adults now and they make their own decisions, which can lead really to physical departure should they move out, whether they get a job, whether they get married, or they just want to live by themselves. So she says the parents kind of evaluate their entire journey. They're also anxious about who they're going to be if they're not going to be parents. Some people are excited about this. Some people are, like I said, they're anxious about it. And then the other bit is that, like, if the child comes back because a job is not worked out or a romantic relationship is not worked out, parents can really question whether they were good parents after all. And so you can start, getting into this stage of self-doubt. So she basically says that this is very normal, at the departure stage, and that again, like, you just need to kind of understand that you are now the parent of an adult, and that you will be there for your child in different ways, and the child will need you in different ways. But this is also a time where the couple, after like 18 years, or maybe more than 18 years, 20, 22, whatever it is, they are now finally kind of figuring out who they are as a couple, right? And like, or maybe you become single by then, or whatever it might be. So now you as an adult have to kind of face your life not being a parent. And so that's the last stage of parenting, which I imagine is a long stage. So yeah, so that's Ellen Galensky's book, and it's a huge piece of research that I encourage you to read. I've tried to do my best to distill it for you. And then for children, I have a tool for parents who are in that interpretive stage when they're talking to their children. It's called Ruby's Worry. And Ruby's Worry is a very good way of like encouraging children to share their concerns with you. And so it has the story of this girl called Ruby, who's a happy girl. And then one day she has a worry. And she doesn't talk to her parents about the worry because she doesn't want to talk to anyone about the worry. And the worry starts following her everywhere. And as the worry follows her everywhere, it actually starts to grow in size. And, you know, it grows so much in size that it starts becoming enormous. And so, through the story, basically, Ruby is told that if she were to share her worry, it would become smaller. And she does end up, she finds another boy who's consumed by worry and hasn't spoken to anyone either. And they talk to each other, and their worries become quite small and they become, happy again. So, it's not about the parent like telling the child, you have to tell me everything, but it's at least giving the child an idea that you need to be able to speak about what's bothering you, and that's how you share what's on your mind and you can make things better. So these are my two books, Ruby's Worry and the 6 Stages of Parenthood. Thank you for staying with me. See you next time.